Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being well-informed. Today, we're digging into something pretty amazing, a story buried for millennia, a genuine cold case, really, from about 12,000 years ago. We're heading to a cave, northern Vietnam. A single human skeleton was found there, and honestly, it's a discovery that's really shifting how we think about early human history.
It really is. This isn't, just another dig. Our subject today, this individual known as 2BH1, named for the Thung Binh Cave, is just fascinating. He's from the late Pleistocene epoch, and his remains, they're so well preserved, it gives us this incredible window into ancient Southeast Asia. So in this deep dive, we're going to unpack the science, the detective work, really, that piece together his story, his final moments, and what his life and death tell us about human migration and, even the earliest known conflict in the whole region. We're drawing heavily on some cutting-edge research, especially a key paper from the Proceedings of the Royal Society B.
Okay, so let's dive right in. Let's step back, way back, 12,000 years. What was life like? Who was living in Southeast Asia back then? This individual, TBH1, found in 2018, he gives us some pretty unique clues, right?
He really does. So the basics. TBH1 was male, about 35 years old when he died. And the dating puts him squarely in the late Pleistocene, somewhere between 12,500 and 12,000 years ago. But the really remarkable thing is the preservation. The skeleton is almost complete. Finding remains like this from this period in Southeast Asia, it's incredibly rare. It allows for such detailed osteological analysis, the study of the bones themselves, which usually just isn't possible.
Wow, near complete. And beyond just being well-preserved, were there any, biological surprises, anything that made the researchers go, huh?
Oh, definitely. There's a really interesting quirk. TBH1 had 25 ribs.
25, not 24.
Exactly, one extra. It's called a supernumerary rib or a cervical rib. It's a congenital thing, a variation you see in maybe, 0.2% to 1.0% of people. Pretty uncommon. Yeah. Apart from that, though, and maybe a minor ankle issue, some light remodeling on his right heel bone, the calcaneus, the bone analysis showed he was actually in pretty good health for most of his life. His skull was crushed after death, probably a roof fall in the cave, but they could mostly reconstruct it. And height-wise, they estimate about 1.7 meters, so around 5'7".
Okay, so we're picturing this guy 12,000 years ago, healthy, average height, but with this rare extra rib. But then things take a turn, right? Because that extra rib, it wasn't just there, it was broken. And this is where it gets really interesting, isn't it? What did that fracture tell them?
Right, this is the crucial part. That fractured cervical rib, it wasn't just a clean break. It showed really clear signs of infection. There was even something called a draining cloaca, basically an opening in the bone where pus could drain out. Grim stuff.
Oh, wow. So infected.
Very. But here's the clincher. They also found a pseudoarthrosis, a false joint. See, that only forms when a broken bone doesn't heal properly over time. It doesn't happen overnight.
Okay, so that means...
It means he lived for quite a while after the injury, probably several months. And it was likely the infection, this long-term infection stemming from the break, that ultimately caused his death, not the initial impact itself.
So he survived the initial injury, whatever it was,
Yeah.
but battled the infection for months. That's quite a story already. And there was something else found right with the rib, wasn't there? A piece of evidence.
Yes, exactly. Right there, very close to the injured rib, they found this tiny triangular flake of quartz. Really small, just over 18 millimeters long, maybe 9 wide, 3 thick. Weighed almost nothing, 0.4 grams.
Tiny.
Tiny. And the thinking is, this was almost certainly the tip of a projectile, like an arrow.
An arrowhead made of quartz. Was that typical? Was that kind of tool common there and then?
Well, that's another twist. It was actually quite unusual. This specific little point, this micro point, it has unique features. The way it was made, its technology, it stands out from other stone tools, the lithics found at the site, or other nearby collections from that time.
It stands out how?
Its origin seems to be non-local. They haven't found similar technology right there in the Trang An area where the cave is, so it suggests it might have been traded or brought in by someone from elsewhere.
Okay.
And its shape, the size, plus this tiny micro notch on one edge, which looks like impact damage, or maybe it was made intentionally as a barb, it all strongly suggests it was hafted, attached to a shaft as part of a weapon system. Most likely an arrow, something designed for high-velocity impact.
So we've gone from a skeleton with an extra rib to a months-long fatal infection caused by a fracture, likely from an arrow tipped with a unique, non-local quartz point. This feels like ancient forensics. Incredible detail.
It really does.
But this isn't just about one man's, tragic end, is it? What's the bigger picture here? What does this tell us about people back then?
Well, this is where it gets really significant for understanding human behavior. The lead author, Christopher Stimpson, he stated pretty clearly that this trauma and the infection that followed, it's the earliest solid evidence we have for interpersonal conflict in mainland Southeast Asia.
The earliest. Wow. So violence between people.
Exactly. The location of the wound, the nature of the fracture, it points strongly to a high-velocity penetrating injury. Not an accident, not a hunting mishap targeting that specific spot. It looks like conflict. This pushes back the timeline for confirmed human-on-human violence in this specific region significantly.
That is a huge claim. But, I mean, it's one individual, right? Can we really say violence was common based on this one skeleton?
It's a very important point, and the researchers are careful about that. They absolutely acknowledge, a single discovery isn't enough to paint a picture of widespread violence.
Right. Need more evidence.
Definitely. But it's a powerful data point. It fundamentally challenges any simplistic view of early hunter-gatherer life as purely peaceful. It shows that complex interactions, including fatal conflict, were part of the human experience here much earlier than we had concrete proof for before. It's really a call for more research, to look deeper into the origins and the frequency of conflict in these ancient societies.
So it opens up a whole new line of questioning about social dynamics 12,000 years ago.
Fascinating. Okay, so beyond the violence, the conflict aspect, TBH1 also tells us more about who these people were, right? Their ancestry.
Yes, absolutely. There's a whole other layer to this discovery. They did what's called craniometric analysis, basically. Very precise measurements of his skull. And his skull shape, his morphology, it clearly groups him with other finds from the late Pleistocene in that region. It also showed a strong link to modern Southeast Asian island populations. One comparison specifically highlighted connections to historical data from the Philippines.
Interesting. So connected to the local ancient populations.
Exactly. It strongly suggests he belonged to the indigenous groups living there during the late Pleistocene.
And the genetics. I know ancient DNA can be tricky to get, but did they manage it here?
They did remarkably well, actually. They extracted mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA, from the petrous bone. That's a really dense part of the skull near the ear, often great for preserving ancient DNA.
Okay, and what did the mtDNA show? It showed he carried the M59 mitochondrial lineage. This fits within the broader M macrohaplogroup, which clearly links him to the early indigenous hunter-gatherer populations of South and Southeast Asia, people who were there before later migrations. And this is really key because it contrasts sharply with different genetic markers, different haplogroups like the F and B related ones. Those later groups are associated with the two-layer hypothesis, the idea that agriculturalists migrated in from East Asia much later, maybe around 4,000 to 6,000 years ago, and largely replaced or mixed with the original populations.
Ah, I see. So TBH1's DNA doesn't show any connection to those later farming groups.
None whatsoever. His genetic signature is purely linked to those earlier indigenous hunter-gatherers.
So if you connect the dots,
yeah,
his DNA is like direct proof right there in his bones that these indigenous hunter-gatherer groups were thriving in the region long before the farmers arrived.
That's exactly it. His physical traits, the skull shape, his genetics, and the radiocarbon dates, which, remember, put him firmly around 12,000 years ago based on charcoal found with him. It all lines up perfectly. He represents that late Pleistocene indigenous population with zero sign of genetic input from the later East Asian migrations.
It's like he's a snapshot from a time before that major population shift.
Precisely. His existence, his genetic code, it fills a really crucial gap in understanding the deep population history of Southeast Asia.
It really paints a much richer, more complex picture of who was living there and when. Okay, so wrapping this up, TBH1. He's not just an old skeleton, not by a long shot. We've got a 12,000-year-old cold case, basically. A man with a rare physical trait, that extra rib, struck by a unique kind of projectile, possibly non-local, survives for months, dies from the infection, and leaves behind genetic clues that connect him firmly to the earliest inhabitants of the region and gives us the earliest proof of deadly conflict there. It's an incredible amount of information from one person.
It truly underscores how vital these rare, well-preserved finds are. TBH1 gives us tangible evidence, not just theories. We get insights into life, death, interactions, ancestry, things that are often just gaps in the record for the late Pleistocene, especially in this part of the world where preservation can be so challenging.
It really makes you think, and maybe this is the final thought for you, our listener.
Yeah.
If one person's bones, found almost by chance, can hold such detailed story, a medical history, evidence of conflict, a deep ancestral record, what other incredible human stories are still out there buried, just waiting for us to find them and figure out how to listen?